I wanted to add this humanistic element to him by expressing fear.
There was one thing that was so obvious to me, the abysmal failure of the marketing, mostly because it was completely tone deaf. First Order officer, without missing a beat, looks directly back at me and says, "Welcome to Geeky Stoics, the podcast, the video podcast," because that's what the cool kids do. Hey, I'm Riley. He's Stephen. What's up, Stephen?
Hey, Riley.
You are caffeinated and ready to begin, I hear, in our pre-show
I'm
chatter.
all sorts of buzzed up and ready.
I love it. I love it. Today we're talking about Acolyte, because we're literally recording this in the hours before it premieres, which is not like the cool, smart thing to do. If we cared about like actually marketing this show effectively, but we would definitely be doing that. But like I'm old and I have work early in the morning, so I can't do the whole like cool YouTuber live stream my entire reaction to the 2 30-minute episodes. I'm sorry, guys. Well, but we do have, I think, some really interesting philosophical Acolyte discussion surrounding some of the discourse. Yeah. One of my least favorite D words, discourse around Acolyte. So, Stephen, bring us in. I think there's some good discussion to be had. Let's do it.
This is right up Geeky Stoics lane. The actor for one Jedi Master Soul, who is pictured in the very beginning of the Acolyte trailers talking to younglings in the Jedi training area. His name is Li Jung-jae. The actor said this in an interview promoting his character, Master Soul, and how he's going to play a Jedi. He says that you have to realize that the Acolyte occurs in a timeline that's 100 years previous to anything out right now, and Master Soul represents a past generation. If anything, the Jedi Masters that come after him are his younglings and Padawans, right? So people who we might recognize as being on the Jedi Council in the time of the Phantom Menace. And he wanted to express something different with Master Soul. And he said, I think it's that he actually feels fear while he is in battle and while he's fighting. I wanted to add this humanistic element to him by expressing fear. And so I've seen a couple people in the Star Wars commentary world discussing this. Some people going, oh, how interesting. They're changing up, the Jedi and like making them less prudent about, things like fear and emotion and all that kind of stuff. And then some people kind of losing their minds about it, like, oh, they're changing who the Jedi are and making them weak and all this kind of stuff. But, Geeky Stoics is about thinking about how emotions and feeling can play into how a Jedi might carry themselves. And Riley, I gotta tell you, it's not that Jedi don't feel fear. Have you ever thought that Jedi don't feel fear?
I know. I mean, I know the line everyone's thinking of the second this comes out, which is fear is the path to the dark side. Fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hate. Hate leads to suffering. By the way, probably the most, or certainly one of the most quoted lines from the prequels. I would say easily. So I get that is sort of, they're basically saying that he's being heretical to the Jedi theology and that a Jedi is supposed to be stoic. But what the quote is, he's not taking pride in or dismissing the fact that he feels and shows fear. And that's, I'm sure, what, if you didn't have the context for and you just saw that quote in a headline, that's what I'm sure these people are reacting to.
Yep. Yeah, no, I mean, for sure. And I just think that there's a thing that comes up often with discussing the Jedi Order, and it sort of has to do with the whole genre of commentary. Oh, the Jedi were the bad guys. They caused the rise of the Empire. They were so blind, yada, 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 corrupt. And that dovetails also into a very postmodern critique of the Jedi as being a cult of suppressing emotion. But the Jedi were never a cult of suppressing emotion. When Anakin Skywalker was trying to explain this to Padme in episode 2, the Jedi are encouraged to love. When he was talking about compassion and all that kind of stuff.
I think that's just because he was horny, though.
He was wildly, wildly horny, and he wanted a way to justify a romantic relationship with Padme.
Sure, yeah.
He was angling for a way out and a side door because he didn't want to accept the attachment clause. But the thing about fear is that Jedi feel fear. the Jedi just strive not to have it dominate their actions and steer their decision making. So it's really interesting to me that Master Soul, played by Lee Jung-jae, he said that he's going to be more expressive of fear. You're going to see it on his face in a way that you might not on Jedi Master Mace Windu in episode 3, after his 3 buddies have been struck down by Palpatine, and he's just got a game face. You know, steely-eyed expression. He's been waiting for this moment.
Yeah.
He is not afraid. Qui-Gon Jinn too. Like, I was in a discussion on Facebook the other day about why is Darth Maul stronger than Qui-Gon Jinn? I was like, Darth Maul's not stronger than Qui-Gon Jinn. He just outmaneuvered him in a fight. You know, just because you win a fight doesn't mean you're stronger. It just means the other guy made a mistake. Qui-Gon Jinn, he must have been afraid. That's why he knelt and meditated. He was calming himself. He was cut off from Obi-Wan in a battle. There's a lot of stuff going on inside a guy at a moment like that. Why did he meditate? He meditated because he was awash in feeling and he needed to get recentered. But he just doesn't show it. I bet he was afraid, though, when that lightsaber hit his chin. You know, when Darth Maul got him in the chin, I bet right there, you see a look of just horror on his face, like, oh no, I've made a fatal error.
I think in a way the whole idea, and this is the most recent Geeky Stoics video that I edited. It's kind of from the second part of the 3-part series we're working on, based around that quote, "Your focus determines your reality," and it's really about the faith over fear. If that's like the single point of the whole video, it's faith over fear. But there is that fear part comes in The Empire Strikes Back, because I mean, if you think about it, Luke Skywalker, Yoda literally leads him to the cave, which is where he will face his greatest fears. It's not an avoidance of that. It's actually confronting fear. And some might say, Stephen, and I know, listen, get ready, type the YouTube comments now. Confronting fear is the destiny of a Jedi. I had to think about it for a second. I want to get the quote
the greatest Star Wars movie ever made.
Amen.
Skywalker.
It is a great quote, though. It's one of those things that The Rise of Skywalker gets right thematically and fails in execution so badly. Anyway, that's a whole nother podcast.
Yeah, but you know, like fear again. I can't remember which book or comic it was, but I remember reading Yoda discussing and reflecting on his feelings and his failures from the prequel era and the rise of the Empire. Yoda, too, was afraid. His bad judgment in the prequels came from a place of fear, engaging in the Clone Wars, not being able to see the dark side shrouding the galaxy and consuming the Jedi Order. He was also afraid. It's just that fear moves through people in different ways. It's like a fear that the wheels are coming off on the Jedi Order, a fear that the wheels are coming off on the Republic. You don't have to like look like this and kind of be quivering and shaking to be full of fear. You could just act as a person who is afraid. Obi-Wan, Obi-Wan in the Kenobi series, he's paralyzed by fear. He's paralyzed by fear.
That first confrontation with Vader.
He runs away. He runs away. I love when he ignites it and then he just goes. I never liked the way that they shot that. I thought it like looked a little silly the way.
There's a problem with a lot of the way they shot things in Kenobi.
I gotta go.
Yes. Well, remember he learned that in the opening scenes of the Phantom Menace on that trade ship, the Jedi Speed Run, the Dash. I missed that. There were years where I didn't get that Easter egg, but no, it is true. I think like anything around the Acolyte that we've been talking about, and as you guys are listening to this podcast, the first 2 episodes will have just premiered on Disney Plus, and the discourse is already been. I've sort of seen preemptively more than Ahsoka, certainly more than really any of the other Disney properties, a greater divide and a greater polarization amongst a fan discourse before the thing's even out. And I think there's some very legitimate reasons that could spawn some interesting discussion, not on the, again, as we will never do here, the black and white Disney sucks or all of Disney Star Wars is the best thing ever, please invite us to your premiere. We will be on neither side of those two things. But I do think that there's an interesting discussion to be had
one day, Riley, and you will not be coming.
That's right. I'm a fan. But I think the best way, I actually think that is very closely tied to our second topic for today's podcast episode, which is, Stephen, I've got to talk to you about this freaking 4-hour Starcruiser documentary just put out a few weeks ago by the one and only Jenny Nicholson, a theme park enthusiast who does these incredible long form commentary. And if you're looking for like a nuanced commentary on something like a controversial Star Wars project like Starcruiser was, 4 hours of in-depth analysis, it doesn't get much more so than that. And I'm sure
after you watch that video, then you have to watch her in-depth analysis of movie-themed church plays.
Oh, that's so good.
It's so good.
It's way too close to the world we grew up into.
Jack Sparrow crucified atop the ship. Oh my Lord. What an amazing
I forgot
video.
about that. Yeah. But it's if you're watching this, I am very confident you've at least seen parts of this this video. But it really did get me to thinking. In fact, it inspired the topic of the current Geeky Stoics YouTube video that I'm editing, that I shot in our most recent trip to Galaxy's Edge on location. The very first Geeky Stoics on location video from Star Wars land. Hopefully not the last. I had a lot of fun making this thing. But the point and the thesis of the video was really a reflection on our ability to turn inwards and receive criticism and feedback in the way that we demand of our favorite storytellers and creatives, because we live in this age of franchise entertainment where the fan base is this weird part of the creative process. The marketing of a movie starts before it even begins filming. And so there's this strange feedback loop that we often put our expectations and demands on the storytellers and the corporations making these movies set in these universes we love. But I think, honestly, there's a really good opportunity to self-reflect on why we should apply the same standards to ourselves, because there was one thing that was so obvious to me in the Starcruiser video, and that was the abysmal failure of the marketing. And it was mostly because it was completely tone deaf. They had no, and I'm not saying anything new here. I don't even think, I'm not going to litigate the ads that they had to pull down. But the point of they really, I objectively think, and I know this because I've been guilty of this in the past. I can think of times where I dismiss any criticism of a thing I'm creating, a thing you're passionate about, that you're putting your blood, sweat, and tears into. And I just dismiss any criticisms they're just haters who aren't the market. They're not even the market anyway. And that prevented them from just being able to think of, I don't know, the very legitimate, real concerns that are going to make this thing be a commercial failure and a tax write-off. And I think that would have been so obvious if you could have not been blind to that fact, if Disney had not been blind to that fact. And I think that's really the biggest problem of the Starcruiser failure. And I don't know, that was my big takeaway watching this video again. I know we've talked about it before. I just can't stop talking about it. It's a train wreck. It's hard to turn away.
What do you think they were trying to achieve at Starcruiser? I know that experiential and immersive entertainment is one of the buzzwords of the day when it comes to theme parks. It was it was very, very brilliantly mocked in that show on HBO, which name I'm now losing, so you should just delete this. Anyway,
I know what you're talking about, though.
Yeah. So what is your take on what they were committed to? What were they so committed to that they could not see daylight?
Yeah. Why were they blind? Because they were so committed to it's I'll use a very concrete example. This is what I swear this is going to answer your question, Stephen, but I'm dancing around a little bit. I say the same to you watching this podcast. I think the problem is exemplified in one interaction that I had at Galaxy's Edge while shooting this video. I set up my little tripod in like a quiet corner of Galaxy's Edge, and I just start making this kind of point about being willing to take feedback and iterate and understand what's maybe hate, but maybe what's legitimate criticism. And I think that's what they failed to do. And I'm making this whole point, and I'm doing it on location, feeling great. The shot looks great. It's framed nicely. There's some like background traffic. I feel like I'm kind of in Mos Espa. That's really what Mos Eisley, Mos Espa. That's what it feels like. And I get a tap on the shoulder in the middle of my, the middle of the segment I'm trying to shoot. And I turn around and there's a First Order officer. And I'm just kind of like you are when someone's in character and I'm just not in the mental space. I've not prepared for this at all. If I were smarter, I would have immediately started playing along and tried to draw him into the video, which would be really smart. I was not, but he's like, "What is this you're doing? Do you have a permit to be filming things here in Batu?" And I was just like, "Well, I don't. I of course I would never." He's like, "Because how can we be sure this isn't seditious material for the not the rebels, for the resistance?" See, but my point is, when I looked at him, in that moment, my brain short-circuited and I wanted to play along. I couldn't think of the first thing I could think of like, oh no, it's definitely would be approved by Darth Vader, something along those lines. That's what I said. Yeah. Which the First Order officer looks, without missing a beat, looks directly back at me and says, "As well, Lord Vader, that wouldn't make any sense at all. That is 47 years ago. Here, the First Order is superior to the Empire, and we are succeeding where they failed."
Order.
Yeah, he's like, the First Order superior to the Empire. Empire failed, and that moment encapsulates, because he is so committed. He's in character, and he is correcting me from the first thing that I think of, which is, you guessed it, the most iconic villain in all of Star Wars history. When I'm trying to make a joke about a bad guy in Star Wars, the first bad guy in Star Wars I think of is that. And that is a micro, I think, example of the confidence that they want this in-universe experience set within a specific part of the timeline that just doesn't connect as much with the broad audience as much as it does. Okay. And it's not because people, quote unquote, hate Disney Star Wars on YouTube. I mean, there's plenty of crazy over the top videos.
It's because of what they love. It's because that they love more the Galactic Civil War era, the Empire versus the Rebellion, Darth Vader. Yeah, I mean, I actually, this is a wonderful point, and it's something that I've talked about for years, which is that I understand why they, putting out the sequel trilogy and giving it their best go to get people really invested in this era that they're building and that they're making movies in, that they needed to make Galaxy's Edge part of that story. But I think it's now time to look at what the people have kind of shown you that they want and what is reliable and what works. And when you go to Star Wars land, you want your picture, Darth Vader, and you want to see Imperial stormtroopers, Han Solo, and Leia. That's what people want, and I mean Leia in the white dress and the buns. General Leia was cool, but that's what people really want at the base level for Star Wars fans. And I'm not talking about super fans. I'm not talking about Twitter influencers and YouTubers. I'm talking about Joe Schmo next door who really likes Star Wars, and his grandson is like, "Please take me to Star Wars land." And he's like, "Oh, cool. We'll get to see Darth Vader." No, you won't. No, you won't get to see Darth Vader.
Darth Vader's lame. The First Order's where it's at.
Yeah, the First Order. And God, if I have to explain to someone what the First Order is anymore, I'm going to lose it, Riley.
Well, if you go to Galaxy's Edge, the character actors will do that for you to your face. They will tell you. They will correct you so that you are appropriately in the timeline.
Yes, we're a neo-imperial movement that spawned in the 30 years after the fall of the Galactic Empire, mostly funded by drug running and the spice trade in the Outer Rim. And it's not a big deal.
I'll listen to your corporate pitch. The last thing I have to say on this, Stephen, is on both it's easy to become blind to criticism where objective, unconstructive hate is spewing your way. and it's easy to love. It's hard to sometimes parse what's what, and I get that. I think that's a legitimate part. On the other side of the spectrum, I think it's easy to take the feedback of those who have something to gain from you, and do the exact opposite thing and think something that you're producing or creating is better than it is in fact is. And that is probably the other piece of the marketing segment in Jenny Nicholson's video that was just hilarious. The staged, like officially sanctioned Disney podcast where it was literally like actors that they staged at different parts of the park that just kind of puppeted talking points about how great the Starcruiser was, and the biggest thing is that they would always use the really awkward fumble over. You can never remember the full official attraction name, so they would never be like the Millennium Falcon ride. They'd be like, and Millennium Falcon Smuggler's Run was such a great time, and Star Wars: The Rise of Resistance. It's Star Wars land, right? We all call it Star Wars land, like, and that's how people, like normal people, talk. And it's just that Star combination of these talking points that they gave to the various influencers that they invited to come promote the thing, but constrained to not authentically promote it in the way that they actually experienced, but to kind of stick to these like talking points and make sure they use the right names. So when you're searching for the Galactic Starcruiser, like that was it. Just that's what really showed the blindness from both directions. From
like even the idea of Smuggler's Run, right? That's a wonderful point. That they're so committed to calling it a certain thing rather than just going with what the fans will call it. They'll just call it the Millennium Falcon ride. And also, by the way, what is the thing that most Star Wars fans of multiple generations might recognize? The Kessel Run. The Kessel Run. And you did a movie about it called Solo. Gosh, it's just like it's like there's a stubbornness to it where just give the people what they want.
Yeah.
That's something that George Lucas understood intimately for decades upon decades upon decades. And yes, he would be a little bit standoffish with fans around the time of the prequels, but he has always said, and it was encapsulated in an interview on stage that he did in 2010 in Israel for an Israeli-Palestinian film festival where he was working with filmmakers from Gaza and Jerusalem. And he reminded the filmmakers there that people only have so much money in their pocket, and it is your job as an artist to make a thing that they want to spend that money on, not something that you expect them to spend money on. You've got to meet people where they're at. Yeah. And where Star Wars fans, by and large, are at, they're still in the early 1980s. That's where they're at. That's where their hearts and their minds are. And I'm not like an anti-Disney era stuff. I think there's a lot to like, but you can't deny that that's where the heart of Star Wars still is.
Yeah. No, 100%. I mean, that's why and the 90s, the positive buzz that I've heard of Acolyte, or the stuff that I find most intriguing, I'm going to find out here in like an hour and change when it premieres as we're recording this, is the tie-in with the older elements of the Star Wars expanded universe that it sounds like Leslie Headland's approaching. That I've always liked her approach. Going way back, that's some of the things that she said when she was at Star Wars Celebration that I was really interested in her approach to the story. Other things that give me pause, but I'm going to try to go in here with an open mind, and you can definitely expect an Acolyte review here on Geeky Stoics very soon. And on that note, Mr. Stephen Kent, cheers to you. You were caffeine heavy. It was an Aperol spritz for me this evening. It's officially summer in South Georgia. That's all I got for this podcast episode. Hey guys, if you enjoy this podcast, make sure you're subscribed to the YouTube channel. Thumbs up if you enjoyed it. We enjoy your comments. We've been getting some great, our first like full video podcast episode we published on YouTube about 2 weeks ago. Got some great response from you guys. So we're going to start incorporating some of the YouTube comments into the show itself. I'm really excited to continue this experiment of bringing the podcast format to YouTube Because Steve and I are veterans, but in the old days, the old feed burner days of podcasts, when you downloaded it and synced your iPod, it's changed a lot since then. So I'm really enjoying the podcast. Stephen, tell the good people on the internet where they can find you and the Geeky Stoics newsletter.
Best place to find any of us is at geekystoics.com and on Twitter. You can find me at Stephen Kent X. Looking forward to talking with you there.
I love it. All right, let's go watch Acolyte. Stephen, until next time, everyone, may the Force be with us all.
Always.